Yvette Cooper has promised a blitz on migration, and she chose none other than the Sun to announce it. Nail bars and car washes will be targeted by immigration officers as they step up enforcement action over the summer, the Home Secretary has announced. Yvette Cooper said 1,000 civil servants working on the now abandoned Rwanda scheme will staff a new returns and enforcement program. Writing in The Sun on Sunday, she said the program will increase returns of those with no right to be here and to make sure rules are respected and enforced. Yvette Cooper, she's made an announcement of an immigration blitz targeting nail bars and car washes. Now, this is a clampdown from Labour in terms of immigration, and she wrote a piece in The Sun. But there's no talk about integrating migrants from being exploited by businesses. Instead, they want to mass deport people. So certainly as a changed Labour Party, I mean, what are your thoughts on Labour going after migrants and illegal immigration as their priority?
I think what frustrates me is like the performance of it, right? I think we could debate migration and who needs deporting and who doesn't, or whether we should be deporting anyone at all. We could debate that all day. I don't think that's necessarily the debate. For me, it's about like the performance of it, right? These are people who, for whatever reason that they're here, right? They could have been trafficked, they could be vulnerable, they could be poor, there could be a million reasons why they're here. I think if you're going to deport people and you're going to do that, and I might not agree with it, just do it and just release a statement through the Home Office, right? I don't think you have to make a performance of it the way that Cooper has. And that's what frustrates me, because these are people, these are humans.
Mm.
So to make a performance out of it for me is just, touching on this idea of, the labor, the new right wing, and it's very disappointing.
I wonder if this is going to settle down in the coming months, because it feels very much like the Labour Party is still they almost still feel like they're in campaign mode for the election, in terms of they're trying to appeal to all
Yeah.
these people that they were trying to
Mm.
win votes from. And someone needs to just remind them the election's over. Like, you don't need to. It's like when we were talking about Gaza earlier on. Like, you don't need to take these stances anymore. You don't need to be performative around the
Mm.
culture
But that's
wars.
their
You can actually
politics,
just
isn't
lead the
it?
country
Right?
now.
I mean,
Well,
maybe you're being too kind to them. But, oh, look, the election's over. They don't need to pretend to be right wing. But let's
yeah,
be honest,
they are.
they are, aren't they?
Yeah,
Um,
it's really sad to see. I'd hoped that Labour wouldn't sort of go down this road in terms of migration. I mean, to the point where when earlier on before the show, when you told me about this story, my immediate reaction to it was, "Are you sure that's right? Are you sure
mm,
that's what they're doing? Surely the Labour Party aren't doing that and announcing it as this." But they were, and they are, and yeah, and it's sad. And Lewis talks about people's backgrounds and why they're here. I mean, I know it's something that comes up a lot. I mean, talking about the nail bars, for example, we know that there are it's not just that, but there are businesses like nail bars, and other similar ones that historically have been rife for human trafficking, where they've got people that are working who are being trafficked, who are
mm.
victims. They're not people that should be raided and be sent on an aeroplane or on a boat and sent back to another country. They're people that need help. The people that need it's like the people coming, in the channel that are paying money to the criminal gangs to get here. They're vulnerable people that need help and support, and we shouldn't be making a performance of it. We shouldn't be making a show of it. We should be saying, you know what, we're going to go to these places and we're going to help these people rather than deport them.
I mean, obviously, in terms of this immigration policy, we all disagree with it, and especially in certain circumstances where these people might have been human trafficked, and the response is just to send them back. Where, I mean, how did they get trafficked in the first place? They're putting them
Hmm.
in danger, right? But I talked about how the electorate weren't as right wing as some people make them out to be, because economically they're definitely on the left, right? But when it comes to crime, when it comes to policing, when it comes to law and order, I would say majority of British people are a bit more conservative on that. And this policy, we are the ones in the minority here, right? This will be very popular with the electorate. And even though I wanted to see a more pro-immigration stance from Labour, I'm dismayed at three. You got the Reform Party, you got the Tories, and Labour are pretty anti-migrant. There's not enough pro-migrant voices anymore in the mainstream.
I-
But
is
isn't it necessary? And when I say necessary, in terms of just getting the consent of the British people to I mean that is what they support. So even
But
though
is
we
it but
think
is
it's
it the
straight,
policy? Is it the policy that they support, or is it the headline of the policy? Is it, well, we're deporting more people, brilliant, because they don't have a right to be here because they're illegal immigrants and they should be gone? Is it that they support, or is it the policy that people who have been human trafficked, who are actually victims, who need support, are going to be treated like criminals? Because I often wonder whether, and maybe I'm not giving enough credit to the average voter, but I wonder whether we understand the ins and outs and the depths of
mm,
this because we follow politics so closely. For your average person, if the government say we're going to get rid, we're going to raid all these places and get rid of all the illegal migrants, they think great because they shouldn't be here. They're illegal. They don't have a right to be here. And I wonder whether the average voter understands
I, kn-
that
I
these are actually vulnerable people
yeah, I
that
know what you're
have been
saying here,
trafficked, and
and
that
I think
element of it.
well, I think it's probably true. Look, if you're someone who says, I think, our benefit system is too generous, we should cut the amount of spending, and that same person then loses their job and then is on benefits, that said person will be like, oh my God, I can't live on this. It's too low. When someone says, oh, immigration is too high, we need to clamp down on it. But let's say this person had a partner from abroad and that immigration policy has now affected their relationship negatively, they'll think differently of it. So I think it's true that, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the truth of politics in general. A lot of people support the headline rather than the policy itself. And as a leftist, as a socialist, I've always been in favor of making the argument to change people's minds. It's why if I was ever, not that I ever would be, but if I was like leader of the Labour Party, I personally wouldn't become more hardline in immigration because I think it's electorally viable. I would try and make the argument actually this is why we shouldn't pursue this policy. But that's irrelevant, isn't it? The headline from the policy, even though we can decipher the difference when you're trying to get people to vote for you, it doesn't really matter. If that's someone's opinion, that's someone's opinion. Again, I would like to see political parties trying to persuade people, but maybe it's too difficult. Maybe Labour had to do this. Again, it's more devil's advocate here. Lewis, I want to bring you in. What do you think? I mean, is this, again, in terms of policy, is pretty grotesque, but don't we have to accept, at least on, I don't know, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to law and order, when it comes to policing, the British people are a bit more conservative?
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment that people, they want the headline. It's almost like it's a populist thing, isn't it? Like they just want to hear that this thing has happened without
Mm.
really going too much deeply into the actual details. But I think at the same time, I do feel like the British people overall are pretty moldable, right? I feel like I've witnessed personally that if the British people are sold the right story about anything, that they can change their minds. I don't want to go too deep into this, but obviously the idea of like how we managed to successfully sell the story of supporting Ukraine to the point where we allowed people to come up with a program where people could come over here and stay in people's homes. Which, yes,
Mm.
we can argue about like it's white people versus brown people, and there's an element of racism in there. Like that's a different argument. But the fact that we managed to convince people to do that and have the vast majority of the country back Ukraine, back people coming here, back giving them money, I feel like the British people are very moldable. So what we actually need is a person who is willing to stand up and tell a very powerful story of why we need immigration, why we need people here, because all it takes is the right person to sell the story, and no one's brave enough to do that.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, you are right in terms of like allowing, well, actually, the state literally paying people to house Ukrainian refugees. But again, I do think that's a massively racialized issue, not in terms of like the policy itself,
Definitely.
but like people accepting that policy. If people, I'm sorry, but I do think it's easier to tell to someone, say, a Western ally, a largely white country, wants to live in your house and they'll pay and will pay you for it. I feel like people, on the whole, are more ready to accept that than say, here's a poorer nation in the global south, which, by the way, we had a lot to do with why it's so poor, wants to come live in your house. I don't think people are going to accept that as
But
easily. So
again,
I don't know. I'm not sure if I agree that, like, oh, we just need the right person to sell the thing. Because in terms of immigration, right, we've had a lot of pretty good people We've had, I mean, even in this election, I think the Greens and actually the SNP, Stephen Flynn, I think has been quite good in terms of rhetoric, in terms of immigration and linking it to like staff shortages, right? We've had probably, I'd argue, the right people say the right thing, but immigration is such a big issue for people that it's not quite as easy as that. I'm
I
not
think
sure if we could just be solved by changing the wording of the argument and suddenly we've now made people more pro-immigration.
If I could just
feel
very
like that
quickly
is too
reply,
easy.
Callum, I know you really want to come in, but I want to reply quickly because somebody needs to have a brave conversation about migration, because
Sure.
we're heading in this direction where the Labour Party have picked up the Tory mantle, have been like, trying to be, anti-immigration, stop the boats, all this type of stuff. They're going about it in a different way. But again, with the Yvette Cooper story, it's showing they're almost trying to appeal into the same people in the same way the Tory party did, right? But somebody needs to have a positive conversation about migration, and nobody is brave enough to stand up for it. Our birth rate is slowing down. We need migration. It is as simple as that. I don't even think if you threw money at the issue of skilling up people for the jobs that we need, even that would be enough. We need migration. It's as simple as that. And somebody needs to, at some point, be brave enough to stand up and actually have that conversation in a positive way. Because if not, it's going to be our undoing, because we need it.
Okay, we're going to move on, but before we do, Callum, you do want to quickly jump in.
I mean, I agree with Lewis on this one thing, and when you what happened with the Ukraine situation was that the media were on side as well, which obviously helped massively, but there was a strong voice in government, i.e. the Prime Minister Boris Johnson at the time, talking about we need to do our bit to help these people because these are our allies, these are our friends, and this terrible thing's happening to them, so let's help them. And if there was someone, just to echo Lewis's point, if there was someone doing that, about people that are fleeing Syria, that are fleeing, even people that are coming from elsewhere in the Middle East, people that are coming from the global South, whether it's climate refugees, whether it's people fleeing war, whoever it is, these people that are coming across in boats, if we were actually pushing the narrative that these are our friends, these are people who have gone through a really horrible thing and we should open our arms and help them, I think even that would help the situation. Of course, there's the race issue, and that is clear throughout this, but when it's sold as let's do the British thing and come together to help other people, it worked really successfully. If Boris Johnson had just turned around and said there's loads of Ukrainians that need somewhere to live because they're refugees, will you take them? Most people in this country would probably have said no. It was because they had all the spiel that went with it to say why we need to have them.
I'm excited to say that Turn Left has significantly grown this year. And with that, we've managed to produce far more ambitious content, interviewing high-profile people. We did a 12-hour live election show. There are multiple people behind Turn Left, but we are still working around our full-time work. But we would love it if this was our full-time. It means we could dedicate so much more and to bring even more ambitious content. So if you've been here from the beginning, or you've only recently become a viewer, if you like what we do, then you can help us out. Please like and share this video. Make sure you drop a comment. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your feedback. And we desperately need more independent media. If you want to see a socialist media alternative thrive, then you could be part of that. So if you can support us on Patreon for £3 or £5 per month, or any one-off donation. We can use that money to upgrade our equipment, to rent out a proper studio, and to start paying ourselves. This is only the beginning. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Patreon.com, Turn Left Media. Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you, Turn Left.